This is the WAXP one-year overview reading for the year of 2024. It's currently September 5th, 2023, 10:02 p.m. Eastern Time. WAXP or WAX is currently 0.03829 or just under 4 cents USD. The shuffle file we're about to play for you was created on August 22nd, 2023 at 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time. That's this file right here. So the overall theme and behavior for WAXP in the year 2024 is like a multi-year scale support level. It's important on a multi-year scale that will be highlighted throughout the year. Generally speaking, when you see the Emperor card in the theme position, it indicates sideways rotation along a support level that is kind of like the bottom of whatever the chart or time frame it's speaking of. So in the case of a one-year reading, the theme position being an important support level, it's going to be on a multi-year scale that we're meeting here. And it also, in a lot of cases, means that we see the low multiple times. It's crossed with what appears to be a new high, at least one new high. When you see the abundance card on a one-year scale, it's often in a theme position, it's often a new high, or it'll be like a new local high, but I think it's probably a new high on a multi-year scale in the midst of the sideways rotation along key support. And when we make that high or highs, we're going to move higher through resistance, stay above it just briefly, and then break back down through that same price level shortly thereafter, creating like a peak with a slash through it, that slash being the price level. Behavior around the highest high or highs for the year. The prudence card, usually in a high significator position, is indicating multiple false tops, or there may be like trickery around the highs, but it's most likely multiple false tops or multiple tops. And that would really speak well to what we've seen so far with the theme card, as well as the lowest low indicator is also a mixed card that indicates probably seeing a low like twice. At least twice we'll see the low, because it's three crisscrosses back and forth through the same price level, usually confirming a bullish trend. So when you see the virtue card, there's a price level that we break through to the upside, then we break back down through it to the downside, and then back up through it again. And in that third move to the upside, we usually are confirming a bullish trend. Doesn't always hold, but when you see that in a low significator, it means at least two lows, because you go up, down, right, to another low, and then up again. So pretty mixed and sideways behavior. It could be quite a bit of volatility based on where I'm seeing these highest highs and lowest lows kind of play out. It's pretty strong indication that there's some wild swings throughout the year as we establish support. The way that you read one of these 1 years, guys, you got to take into consideration each of these cards represents about 2 weeks of time going horizontal across the screen, right? So we started in the first 2 weeks of January, last 2 weeks of January. But what you have to keep in mind is it's just kind of an estimate of time, right? Not each card's energy is going to line up perfectly with 2 weeks of time. So you need to be mindful of that and follow the sequence of events. The sequence of events is going to keep you on track when we do deviate a little bit here or there from the timing being right on point. The majority of the time will be reliable, but there's likely moments where we'll be like within 2 weeks off or so. So just keep that in mind, my friends, and trade responsibly. If you do plan to trade off of this information, make sure to trade responsibly. You have to trade the same way you would as if you were using technical analysis. All right, so with that said, guys, it's the early part of the month, late part of the month, the high indications about the month's high and indications about the month's low. So there's a cluster of 4 for each month, and we go across, right? So in early January, we have erratic behavior back and forth through the same price level. It'll be an important price level on a multi-day scale. In the midst of that erratic behavior back and forth through that price level, we're going to revisit a crest that was a recent past opportunity. So likely within like the last few months, let's say the last quarter of 2023, there's likely a notable crest there, and we'll be revisiting that in the midst of this erratic behavior. That crest will likely form when we have a big move to the upside, pushing the upper end of a range on a multi-day scale higher. The high for January forms with a pop and drop. There's also a trade opportunity there I'll talk about in more detail in the paid version. The low for January forms when we have a rally into a key resistance on a multi-day scale, and then we break down with consecutively lower spikes up on the way down, taking us into the end of the month where the low likely is most likely to take place. And this would be our lowest low thus far here in January in the midst of this decline, which I think probably declines all the way into, well, it declines out of January, and that decline offers trade opportunity. Again, we'll talk about it again in more detail in the paid version. In February, we have a lot of price change. When you see the Prince of Swords, it's usually a lot of price change. There could be some sort of legal issues there that causing volatility, but it's not always tied to legalities. From a chart pattern standpoint, it could be a big move to the upside along a diagonal trend line with some like wild kind of swings on the way up, or it could be a diagonal trend to the downside. It's one of those cards that could go in either way, but there's a key resistance on a multi-day scale that's going to be highlighted there. A key resistance, I should say, on a 1-year scale that'll be important if you're looking at it from like a 1-year chart. And I believe it's to... Wow, I pulled the Ace of Discs and I pulled the Princess of Discs when trying to determine direction. So I think we probably have this like trough that forms on the cusp of January, February, maybe in early February, and then there's this notable move to the upside to a highest high thus far for the year. It'll form in the midst of some volatility, and then there'll be a sharp drop in that volatility. And it looks like there's an important trough like this, the first or second week of the month of February, followed by a significant move higher into a highest high and a trade opportunity, obviously, at that highest high. The low for February, there'll be a notable fake out or shakeout, some sort of intentional misdirection from utilizing technical chart behavior to mislead individuals. Interesting. Okay, so it's a little unclear here, but what I think happens between February and March is we go from a highest high to a lowest low back to a highest high within the month of February and March. It's either that or we have a one highest high on the cusp of February, March, but my sense is that we probably have a highest high mid-February and then another high towards the end of the month of March. So towards the end of the month of February, there's a rally into a prominent crest. It's not a highest high. We go from a highest high into volatility with a sharp drop and then a rally out of the end of February, offering trade opportunity, and that rally takes us into the completion of a bullish trend at the beginning of March, where we then see that orange highlight there is a correlation to the Emperor card. So it's likely that we see, and it also correlates to a lowest low. So it's interesting that we see the Emperor card in the lowest low there. That also speaks to what we were speaking about with us establishing support on a multi-year scale and seeing the low more than once. So we go from that rally out of February into March and then decline. There's a speaker mid-month of March, something that impacts WAXP, and the speaker should not be trusted. And then there's a lot of movement sideways around the low, followed by a real big move to the upside at the end of the month, taking us back to a highest high. So we go from a highest high towards the early to mid February to a lowest low early to mid March, and then a highest high in late March again. Behavior around the March low will have a pop, like a move higher and a full retracement of that move back down. A lot of trade opportunity in the end of March. We'll talk about that in more detail in the paid version. Guys, if you're interested in the paid version, it's a great way to support the channel. The way that you go about getting it, you go to our website, Tarot for Traders, our services, SO Meta Posts, scroll down to 1 year report, click here. And this is where you could specify any ticker or crypto symbol. You put in the year that you're interested in and the ticker or crypto symbol. Continue and purchase, and it's a really great way to support the channel, guys. The channel does not trade off of this information for the most part. My family has a little bit, but like we really don't spend our time trading. What we're doing is keeping ourselves unbiased. But with that said, the channel does need support, my friends. So make sure if you utilize this information regularly that you go ahead and follow through on this. It's the right thing to do. We also recognize your names in the live feeds and all that, guys. The people that do that, because they're really helping to support the channel. Thank you to all those of you that do that. And so then we have three, like out of this big move into a high at the end of the month of March, where after the big move, there's sideways rotation establishing support at a higher support, right? So around the highest high, there's sideways rotation there. And that'll take us into April, where we have three pokes through the same price level. Like the cusp of March, April, three pokes through the same price level, usually horizontal. Sometimes it's on an angle. It's usually horizontal. Three pokes through the same price level, or trend line, I should say, followed by a sharp drop off of that third poke, taking us into another trough, probably the second week of April. Out of that trough, we have a fast, sudden move higher. Difficult to determine if the high for the April high is at the beginning of the month or the end of the month, but I think what happens is we probably do some whipsaw action here. So we drop off of that third poke here into a trough in the early part of April, and then there's a fast sudden move higher out of that low, taking us to a high mid-April, like a month's high mid-April. And then we do a U-shaped dip into the end of the month, where we come back and we revisit that resistance again. So we have a peak, a trough, and then a peak there towards the end of the month. And we'll decline to and through support to meet a second support off of the high, and then do some sideways rotation before like coming back and revisiting a high. And then there's that important range on a multi-day, on a 1 year scale at least, an important range there that's highlighted in May. Looks like it's to the upside, and that would make sense because the May month's high, it highlights an important resistance level on a multi-day scale that we've met many times before and failed to break through. We usually decline off of that resistance, and the low takes us, the low for the month, which I think is probably towards the third week of the month of May, forms after we sell off from a near overbought peak or crest through multiple support levels. Off of the low, we have a big move higher, and then we successfully establish support where we had resistance. We turn it into support, and move sideways into June, where there's an important resistance level highlighted there. Off of that important resistance, the June high, there's an important crest that forms in June, and it looks like it's actually probably on the cusp of June, July, or in early July. There's an important crest, not necessarily a highest high, but what we have here in the end of June, after that resistance level, in the end of June, we have this notable decline to revisit a support level that we met recently. So on a 1 year scale, we're talking usually within like the last couple months. And my sense is that support level is probably wherever this double X ends up being as a trough. It's probably that support level that we revisit. But the low for June is going to form. It's going to form towards the end of the month of June, and it'll form after a brief peak that's easily missed, followed by a decline through multiple support levels. Out of oversold territory, a big move to the upside that'll stand out on a 1 year scale, taking us out of the end of the month of June into early July, where we see a high at the end of the month of July. It looks like it may be another highest high for the year, but not necessarily. It doesn't have the highest probability of that, but it could be. What I do see is a significant decline off of this peak that we have towards the end of the month of July, a decline that increases with momentum moving forward in time, taking us into an important support level on a multi-day scale there in early August. July month's low is also a trade opportunity. We'll talk about in more detail on the high as well for the month, a trade opportunity there. We'll talk about in more detail in the paid version. We're going to weed out the trades that aren't worth getting into and just talk about the best ones. But there's a notable drop on the cusp of July, August, a notable move to the downside, and then sideways rotation. We rally off of the low, or the low forms when we have a rally along a diagonal trend line that ends with a fast sudden move higher, and then a breakdown through that diagonal trend line with increasing volatility on the way down. So I think what we do is we drop pretty sharply early in August to a support level. Then we do sideways rotation, maybe even a move to the upside, like a fast sudden move to the upside from the low, from the month's low thus far into a month's high. And then from that month's high, we have a notable decline through multiple support levels, taking us all the way into what's very likely another lowest low here on the cusp of, or in early September. Not the highest probability of a lowest low, but there's a strong probability of there's some. It's this low here is really strong probability here in March, probably the highest, as well as the low here around the cusp of September, October. But this is the second highest probability. I think the decline out of August into September, it takes us to an important trough. It's probably not a lowest low, because the low there in September is the Ace of Swords, which indicates a good midpoint between like if you were to create like a straddle, or if you were to create a long position and a short position and put them on at separate times. The price level at the low of September would be a good mean point, if you will, because what probably happens is we go from a lowest low. It is very likely a lowest low. We go from a lowest low, and then we have this big move at the end of the month to a highest high in September. So lowest low in early September, highest high in late September. Then, because of that move off of the low, there's another opportunity, because we revisit the low there in the midst of price swings around the cusp of September, October. So we go from a lowest low to a highest high, back to a lowest low there in October. It's kind of like the opposite of what happens here in February, March, where we go from a highest high to a lowest low to a highest high. Here in September, October, we're going from a lowest low to a highest high to a lowest low, right? So some pretty significant price swings. The month's high of October forms when we have a prominent move higher, and then a full retracement of that move. And there's a notable decline in late October that forms like declines off of an overbought peak or crest. The months of October's low, it forms when we have a failed attempt to break through key resistance, and then a decline through key support on a multi-day scale. Okay, so I think that overbought crest or peak's probably on the cusp there of October, November that we sell off from. So it's price swings into the end of October, and then there's this peak, and it's not a crest, it's a peak that we sell off from pretty notably there around the cusp of October, November, into a trough, and then early November, and then a lower trough in late November, out of which there's a significant move higher. It'll be a significant trough on a 1-year scale. It won't be a lowest low per se, but it'll stand out. And out of it, we have this rally along a diagonal trend line, breaking through horizontal resistance to meet a second resistance before pulling back to somewhere between those two price levels. So there's a rally that increases with momentum moving forward in time into the end of the month, where we have a breakout on a 1-year scale. There should be some sort of notable breakout, not necessarily through a highest high, but it'll be a notable breakout. And I'm advised not to chase that rally. There's a bit of a decline into the early part of December, followed by a notable move higher, taking us to key resistance level again. It's possible it's the same resistance or crest that we saw here around June, or the cusp of June, July. It might be the same, but we sell off pretty notably through multiple support levels. A significant move to the downside into the end of the year, or out of the end of the year. The full card in the December low position also indicates a pretty significant trade opportunities. It would stand out amongst many of the other trades throughout the year, and it might be a good place to get into a long position, but we'll talk about that in more detail in the paid version. The sneak preview for the following year, it's pretty bullish overall. Look out for the 10-year overview reading that we're going to do. It should be coming out in the next few weeks, and we'll get into what we see in 2025 in a little bit more depth in that 10-year. But what we should see is sideways movement, bumping along resistance, breaking through at some point, bumping along resistance some more, maybe breaking through again. But the majority of the behavior is going to be bumping along resistance. And that's 2025. All right, my friends, make sure to follow that rule of karma. It's the most important part of the channel. You do so here at the resources tab of our website, Tarot for Traders, where our angel investors like yourself are donating 5% of the profits forward to one of the charities here through one of these click here links. It's super important, my friends. Pay it forward. Keep the flow of abundance going through the universe, and then keep the channel running, guys. Make sure to show some gratitude and some support, and send 5% of the profits back to the channel through one of these links: Cashapp, PayPal, Venmo, Wise if you're international. That leaves you with 90%. That's a ton. That's way more than a stockbroker would ever leave you with. And they're like, they joke about whether or not they're right. They don't know. They have no clue. So in any case, make sure to trade responsibly. Follow that rule of karma. Spend that 90% out of love. As long as you follow those rules, my friends, you're an angel investor of the channel. The universe is going to send it back to you tenfold through this channel. I'll see you on the next one. Stay tuned if you got the paid version.